Let me ask you something. When you think of an old, happy memory, like a day from your childhood, or some moment of joy, do you just see it or do you feel it again? Neville Goddard says, our mind understands the language of feeling, not words. When you genuinely feel something, as if you already have it, your inner mind accepts it as true, and what's true within becomes true outside. Welcome to Story Reads, and today we're breaking down Neville Goddard's book, Feeling is the Secret. Let's get into it. This book came out in 1944, and the title itself captures the entire book. Feeling, as in what you feel. The secret, as in that hidden truth. Neville says for centuries people have searched for a secret, some magic formula, some special words, some method that could change a life. But that secret was never out there. That secret was inside every person, all along. And that secret is feeling. Now let's understand this properly, starting from the beginning. Say there's a small child at home, and you told them something. You're really smart. Now think. When you say this, what feeling is behind it if you genuinely believe it? There's warmth in your voice, there's pride in your eyes. And that child, they don't just hear words, they absorb that feeling. Now think, if you say the same words, but inside you have doubt. You're thinking, actually he's pretty average. The words are the same. You're really smart, but the feeling is different. And that child will absorb that doubt too, no matter what the words were. Neville says this is exactly what happens with our own subconscious mind. Whatever words we speak, whatever thoughts we think, the subconscious doesn't hear those words. It hears the feeling behind them. And whatever feeling it hears, it takes as truth and manifests it in our life. This is feeling is the secret. Now let's understand this with another everyday example. Say there's a guy, let's call him Marcus. Marcus has a big exam coming up. An interview for a job. Every morning Marcus stands in front of the mirror and says, I'm going to get this job. I'm qualified. They're going to pick me. These words are very positive, right? But while Marcus is saying these words, what's going on inside him? Inside there's anxiety. What if they don't pick me? How strong are the other candidates going to be? I don't really have enough experience. All this doubt, all this anxiety. This is his real feeling. The words say, I'm going to get the job. But the feeling says, I'm afraid I won't. Neville says the subconscious mind catches that feeling, not the words. And that subconscious, it manifests that anxious feeling. This is why Marcus's interview doesn't go well, no matter how many positive words he says. Now let's think of the opposite scenario. Say the same Marcus the night before going to sleep. He stops repeating affirmations. Instead, he closes his eyes and he imagines a scene. What was that scene? His friend is calling him and saying, Marcus, congratulations, you got it. Marcus didn't just see this picture. He felt the feeling he would have if this actually happened. That joy, that relief, that lightness, like a huge weight had been lifted off. He made this feeling genuine, as if it was happening right now, real right now. And with this feeling, he fell asleep. Neville says this is the real practice. And when this practice genuinely happens, results genuinely come. Now the question is, how does this actually work? Neville explains this through the subconscious mind. Our consciousness has two parts. The first is the conscious mind. This is the part that thinks, decides, reasons. The second is the subconscious mind. This is the part that's deep within. And this subconscious mind, it's very powerful, but it has one specific characteristic. It doesn't understand logic. It only understands feeling. Let's understand this with another example. Say, at night you're sleeping, and you have a dream. In the dream, you're falling from a tall building. Now, in reality, you're lying in bed. Nothing is happening to you. But in the dream, Your heart starts racing, your breathing speeds up, maybe you wake up sweating. The body didn't know the difference between real and dream. The body only responded to the feeling, and that feeling was fear. Neville says this is the nature of the subconscious mind. It doesn't know whether something is real or imagined. It only understands feeling. And whatever feeling it genuinely receives, it accepts as true. And once the subconscious mind accepts something as true, it starts manifesting that truth in the outer world. So if you keep giving it the feeling of anxiety, the subconscious believes anxiety is your reality, and it creates that same reality. But if you genuinely give it the feeling of fulfillment, the subconscious believes fulfillment is your reality, and it creates that. This isn't magic, this is a mechanism, like how a machine works. Put in input, you get output. Feeling is the input, reality is the output. Now, a concept that's very central to this book, SATS, state akin to sleep. Neville says there's a specific time during the day when the subconscious mind is most open. That time is just before sleep, when you're getting drowsy, your eyes are getting heavy, you're starting to detach a little from the world. At this time, the conscious mind loosens its grip, and the subconscious mind starts listening directly. Whatever feeling you hold at this time, go straight into the subconscious without any filter. This is why Neville says this time is the most precious. What do most people do at this time? They think about the worries of the day. What's going to happen tomorrow? That thing didn't work out. That thing went wrong. And this anxiety, this negativity goes straight into the subconscious without any filter, and the subconscious works on it all night. Neville says, change this pattern before sleep. Do one thing, choose a scene that represents your desire as already fulfilled. A small scene, no big drama, like someone is saying congratulations to you, or you're holding the thing you wanted in your hands, or you're standing in the place you wanted to be. Enter this scene completely, as if you're there, not from outside, from inside. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How does it feel? And with this feeling, fall asleep. Neville says this practice, not just one night, every night, slowly. The subconscious mind starts accepting this new feeling. And when the subconscious accepts it, the outer world starts reflecting it. Now let's understand this more deeply with another example. Say there's a mother. Her son lives in another city far from home. They haven't spoken in a few days. There was some misunderstanding. The mother is very worried. Every night before sleep she thinks, I wish he would call. I wish everything would be okay. But along with this, there's anxiety too. What if he doesn't forgive me? What if he never talks to me again? Neville says this I wish feeling. This is the feeling of wanting. Wanting means don't have, need, and the subconscious takes this as the reality of don't have and keeps running with it. But if this mother, before sleep, imagines a scene, like the phone is ringing, it's her son, and he's saying, Mom, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And she feels that warmth. The warmth she would feel if this actually happened, that relief, that joy, that peace. And with this feeling, she falls asleep. Neville says this feeling goes into the subconscious. The subconscious starts taking this as the reality of it's done. And slowly, in the outer world, this same reality starts to manifest. Maybe in a few days, maybe in a few weeks, but it happens, always. Now, a very important concept that Neville emphasizes again and again in this book, feeling of fulfillment and feeling of want. There's a huge difference between these. Most people, when they try to manifest something, they're in feeling of want. I want this, I want this, I want this. They keep repeating this, but every time they say this, what's the underlying feeling? I don't have it. And the subconscious catches that don't have, and it strengthens that don't have even more. Neville says you need to shift from feeling of want to feeling of having. How does this shift happen? Through imagination. When you imagine a scene where your desire is already fulfilled, and you feel that scene so genuinely that it feels like the present moment, then you move into the feeling of having, and the subconscious catches that. Have, and strengthens that have even more. This is the whole shift, from want to have. Now another example. Say there's a small shop owner. His business has had fewer customers for the last few months. Money's been tight. Every day he worries and thinks, business isn't doing well. Customers aren't coming. And when he thinks this, what's his feeling? Worry, lack, tension. And this feeling goes into the subconscious, and the subconscious increases that lack even more. Now, if this shop owner, before sleep, imagines a scene. His shop is full, customers are coming in, money is piling up at the register, and he feels that satisfaction, that relief. Everything's okay now. Neville says this feeling, this genuine satisfaction, will go into the subconscious, and the subconscious, taking this abundance as reality, will start manifesting it outside. Maybe an old customer comes back, maybe a new idea comes that grows the business, maybe some unexpected way shows up. Neville says, don't worry about how it will happen. That's the subconscious's job. Your job is only the feeling. Now, a concept that's very practically useful. Revision. Neville says every day there are moments that don't go well. Some conversation went wrong with someone. Something went badly. Some bad news came. And what do? We keep replaying it. If only I had said that, it would have been better. I wish I hadn't done that. And every time we replay this, we're living that same negative feeling again. And that feeling goes deeper into the subconscious. Neville says there's a solution to this. Revision. Before sleep at night, imagine that event again, but this time, the way you wished it had happened. Let's take an example. Say at the office, a coworker cut you off mid-sentence. In a meeting, in front of everyone, you felt bad about it, maybe even a little angry. Before sleep at night, imagine that moment again. But this time, that coworker is listening to you carefully, and afterward says, that was a great point you made. Feel this new version completely. Neville says this has two benefits. First, that negative feeling that was going into the subconscious, it's eliminated. Second, a new positive feeling gets planted, which will shape future situations. This is a very simple practice, but very powerful. Now, another very important teaching, Neville says our self-image. How we see ourselves. This is the biggest thing that shapes our reality. Let's understand this with an example. Say there's a young woman. Since childhood, she's felt like she's shy. Speaking in front of people scares her. This isn't just a belief. It's become her self-image. And every time she has to say something, she experiences the same feeling, nervousness, fear. I can't do this. And the subconscious catches this feeling and keeps creating the same situations where she gets nervous. Now, if this woman, before sleep at night, imagines a scene, she's speaking confidently, people are listening attentively, and she feels good about it, and she genuinely feels this confident feeling. Neville says slowly, her self-image will start to change from I'm shy to I can speak confidently. And when self-image changes, behavior automatically changes because the subconscious now starts taking a new identity as truth. Neville says this is the deepest level of change because your self-image. This is what defines what you attract, what you reject, what you consider possible, what you consider impossible. And changing your self-image means changing the direction of your entire life. Now, a concept that's very important in this book, your outer world, is a mirror of your inner feeling. What does this mean? What you see outside is actually a reflection of what's inside you. Let's understand this with an example. Say there are two people. Put both of them in the same situation. Say both have to move to a new place, new city, new people. The first person, inside their feeling, the new place will be hard, people are strangers, I'll feel lonely. The second person, inside their feeling, the new place is exciting, I'll meet new people. New opportunities will come. Both are going to the same place, same city, same situation, but their experience will be completely different. The first person might genuinely find it difficult. People might stay distant from them. They might feel loneliness. The second person might make new friends. Good opportunities might come. Why? Neville says because their feelings set their lens. And that lens, it tells their subconscious mind what kind of reality to create. The outer world is the same city, same people, but each person's own version is different, according to their own feeling. Neville says this is the most empowering truth, because it means you can't control the outer world, but you can shift your feeling. And when feeling shifts, your version of the world shifts too. Now, a concept that Neville explains in great detail in this book: persistence. A lot of times people start this practice, do it for a day or two, don't see immediate change, and give up. Neville says this is the biggest mistake. He gives an example. Think about planting a seed. Today you planted the seed. Tomorrow you go check, nothing's visible. Day after you check again, still nothing. Would you dig up the seed and throw it away saying this isn't working? No. You know that seeds take time to germinate. Something is happening underground, whether it shows from above or not. Neville says your feeling is also a seed like this. When you genuinely plant a feeling in the subconscious, nothing will show outside immediately, but work is happening in the subconscious. The process of turning that feeling into reality has begun. Neville says, persist. Every night, repeat that feeling, strengthen it, whether something shows outside or not, because the moment you doubt, this isn't working, that doubt is also a feeling, and it also goes into the subconscious, and it starts creating a new negative reality. So don't plant the feeling of doubt. Persist with trust, and one day it'll show outside too. Now, a very relatable concept. Neville says people often make their feelings dependent on outer circumstances. When I get the money, then I'll feel relaxed. When the relationship is fixed, then I'll be happy. When my health is good, then I'll feel energetic, and this is all when then thinking. Neville says this approach is completely backwards because the subconscious only understands now. For it, when has no meaning. When you say, when the money comes, then I'll feel relaxed, the subconscious hears, I'm not relaxed right now. And it keeps creating that not relaxed reality. Neville says, reverse the order, feel first. Circumstances will follow later. Feel relaxed. Now, whether the money has come or not. Feel happy. Now, whether there are problems in the relationship or not. Feel energetic. Now. Even if health isn't perfect right now, this isn't pretending, this is genuinely creating that state within yourself. The state you want to see in your outer reality. And when you genuinely create that state, the subconscious manifests that same state outside too. Feeling first. Circumstances second. This is the core of the entire teaching. Now, a concept that's very important in this book. The relationship between imagination and reality. We generally think imagination means something that's not real, a fantasy, a daydream. And reality means what's actual, what we can see, touch. Neville says this understanding is wrong. He says, imagination creates, and reality is just its result. What does this mean? Everything that's around you today, a building, a car, a phone, all of this was first in someone's imagination. Someone thought about it first, then felt it was possible. And then that imagination became physical reality. Imagination comes first, reality comes after. This same principle applies to your personal life too. What you imagine, genuinely, with feeling, that eventually becomes your outer reality. Imagination is cause, reality is effect. Neville says the day you truly understand this, from that day, the way you treat your imagination completely changes. You start taking imagination seriously. You know that whatever you imagine, with feeling, you're actually creating it. Now, a very honest thing Neville says in this book, he says this teaching sounds simple, but applying it isn't simple. Why? Because our old feelings, our habits, these were built over years. They won't change instantly with one night's practice, but they change with consistency. Neville gives a very simple instruction every night, before sleep, just a few minutes. Choose a scene that represents your desire as already fulfilled. Enter that scene, feel it, and go to sleep. That's it. No complicated ritual, no lengthy process. A few minutes, every night, genuinely. And Neville says, people who do this consistently eventually see changes in their lives, always, without exception. Now, a concept Neville explores in great detail, conviction. Neville says feeling alone isn't enough. That feeling needs to have conviction with it. Conviction means a certainty that goes beyond doubt. Let's understand this with an example. Say two people are waiting for exam results. The first person thinks, maybe I'll pass. I hope so. This is a hopeful feeling, but there's uncertainty in it. The words maybe and hope themselves tell you there's doubt inside. The second person thinks, I prepared well. I passed. There's no maybe here. There's a steadiness, a certainty. Neville says the first person is sending a mixed message to their subconscious. Half yes, half no. And the subconscious gets confused. Which version should it manifest? The second person is sending a clear message, completely yes. And the subconscious works on that. This difference is very subtle but very important. Neville says when you imagine a scene at night, don't do it with the feeling of I hope this happens. Do it with the feeling of this has happened, like a fact, like something with no debate. This difference, hope and no, this is conviction. And feeling done with conviction manifests much faster. Let's understand this with another relatable example. Say a man every morning leaving the house thinks, traffic's going to be bad. I'm going to be late. What's his feeling when thinking this? Frustration, anticipation of delay, a kind of certainty that he'll be late. Notice, this is a negative thing, but there's conviction in it. He's completely certain he'll be late because there was conviction in his feeling, and the subconscious manifested that exact conviction. Now, if the same man, with that same comfy I'll get there on time, and believe this with as much certainty as he had about his traffic fear. Neville says this conviction, this could turn his entire life in a different direction. The problem isn't that people don't have conviction. The problem is their conviction is often for negative things, and for positive things, they only have hope. Feeling is the secret, says. Redirect that conviction toward the positive direction. Now, a concept Neville presents very beautifully in this book, the law of reversibility. This is a very interesting principle. Neville says your body and your feelings are connected, and this connection works in both directions, meaning when you have a feeling inside, your body expresses that feeling, posture changes, facial expression changes, breathing rhythm changes. But this also works in reverse if you deliberately move your body the way you would if you were experiencing that feeling. The feeling itself starts to generate. Let's understand this with a simple example. When someone is genuinely happy, what's their posture like? relaxed shoulders, a natural smile, a lighter way of walking, a sparkle in the eyes. Now think, if someone, without being happy, just deliberately takes this posture, smiles, relaxes their shoulders, in a few minutes, they'll genuinely start feeling a bit better. This isn't just some trick. Neuroscience confirms this too. Body and mind have a two-way relationship. Neville says when you imagine a scene at night, don't just create a mental picture. Bring your body into that feeling too. If in the scene you're hugging someone, then feel your arms the way you would if you were embracing someone. If in the scene you're happy about achieving something, bring that smile to your face. Genuinely, this body involvement makes the feeling more real. And the more real the feeling, the deeper it goes into the subconscious. Now, a very important concept, Neville says many times people want something, but also hold a hidden resistance to getting it. Let's understand this with an example. Say, there's a young woman who wants a good life partner. On the surface, this is what she wants, and this is what she thinks about. But deep down, maybe because of a past relationship, there's a fear sitting inside. What if my heart gets broken again? This fear, this is a kind of resistance. And when she thinks about a relationship at night, this fear comes along too. Neville says in such cases, two feelings are going to the subconscious at the same time. One of desire, one of fear. And the subconscious gets confused. What's the solution? Neville says, first acknowledge that resistance, don't ignore it. Then, in that night's imagination, address that resistance too. Like, in that scene, don't just feel got a partner, also include a feeling that's the opposite of that fear. I'm safe, I can trust, this relationship won't hurt me. When you address this underlying fear too, that resistance slowly starts to dissolve, and only then can the feeling of desire go into the subconscious without any obstruction. This is a very practical insight, because often people only focus on their desire and ignore their fear, when actually the real work is to address both together. Now, a concept Neville presents very practically. Acting the part. Neville says, how does a really good actor work? They don't just say lines, they become the character for that time. And that's why the audience finds them believable. Neville says, you also need to act your desired reality. But this isn't a performance for others, this is a performance for your own subconscious. Let's understand this with an example. Say Simeone is currently struggling financially, but they want to be financially secure and comfortable. Neville says at some point during the day, just for a few minutes, act as if you're already financially secure. What does this mean? No big show off. But in small things, like if you're making some decision for some task, make that decision with the confidence as if there's no shortage of money at all. In your posture, in your voice, in your reactions, bring that calm that a secure person has. This acting is powerful because it's not just thought, it's a lived experience just for a moment, but genuinely. And the subconscious catches this lived experience. Neville says children do this very naturally when they play doctor or teacher in their games. They don't just pretend. For that moment, they genuinely become that character. Their voice changes, their attitude changes. As we grow up, we lose this capacity. But Neville says this capacity is still there. And using it again, this is a practical tool of feeling is the secret. Now, a very interesting topic, Neville talks about how coincidences aren't actually coincidences. Often when people hold a feeling for a long time, and then something happens that matches that feeling, they say, wow, what a coincidence. Neville says this isn't a coincidence. Let's understand this with an example. Say someone was thinking of an old friend, thinking for many days, I wish we could talk, and a few days later, suddenly that friend texts on their own. People say, is that telepathy or what? Neville explains. When you genuinely think of someone with feeling, a connection forms at the level of consciousness, and the subconscious mind, in its own way, starts aligning circumstances so that connection manifests in physical reality too. This isn't magic, it's the same principle. What's within comes without. When you genuinely feel something, it's happening, then the universe, meaning that vast working of the subconscious, starts arranging it, and when it happens, we call it coincidence, but actually, it was the result of your own feeling. Neville says once you understand this, coincidences in your life start feeling less strange and more expected. Now, moving this first section forward, a very important concept, limiting beliefs and their origin. Neville says most of our limiting feelings aren't originally ours. We absorbed them in childhood from the people around us. Let's understand this with an example. Say a child is growing up in a home where parents are always tense about money. Every conversation is, we don't have enough, we can't afford that. The child hears all this again and again for years. He might not remember the words, but the feeling that came with those words, anxiety, lack, fear, that feeling settles inside him. And growing up, when money matters come up in his own life, that same old feeling automatically activates. Anxiety, lack, fear, no matter what his actual financial situation is. Neville says these inherited feelings, these are the trickiest because they're so old and so familiar that we take them as our own truth. I'm just like this. My family has always been like this. But Neville says, you are not that feeling. You learned that feeling. And what's learned can be learned again with a new feeling. This process doesn't happen instantly, but it's possible for every person. And this is real freedom, freedom from your inherited feelings by your own choice. So here's a detailed summary of this first part. The subconscious mind understands feelings, not words. Satiety, the time just before sleep, is the most powerful. There's a big difference between feeling of want and feeling of having. Revision can change negative past events. Changing self-image automatically changes behavior. The outer world is a mirror of inner feeling. Persistence is necessary, like a seed takes time to germinate. Feeling comes first, circumstances follow, imagination creates, reality is the result. Feeling done with conviction manifests faster. Body and feeling have a two-way relationship, and acting the part can make feeling genuine. Hidden resistances need to be addressed too. Coincidences are actually the result of our own feelings, and many limiting feelings are inherited, which can be consciously replaced with new feelings. There's a story Neville often returns to about his own teacher, a man he simply called Abdullah, a teacher who taught Neville something that became the foundation of everything he later wrote. Abdullah told Neville one thing again and again: never accept a fact as final. A fact is only the result of an assumption that has been held long enough to become hardened. This single sentence changed how Neville saw everything. Think about how strange this sounds at first. A fact is supposed to be a fact. Something is either true or it isn't. But Abdullah was saying something deeper. He was saying that what we call facts about our lives, our health, our finances, our relationships, our abilities, these aren't permanent truths carved into stone. They're assumptions that have simply been held for so long that they've solidified into something we no longer question. And if an assumption can solidify into a fact through repetition, it can also be dissolved through a new assumption held with the same persistence. Neville carried this teaching for the rest of his life, and in Feeling is the Secret, he applies it specifically to feeling. He says, whatever you're feeling right now about yourself, about your circumstances, about what's possible for you, this isn't the final word. It's simply the current state of an ongoing process, and that process can be redirected. Now let's go into something Neville talks about that's genuinely practical for anyone trying to apply this teaching: tension. He says one of the biggest reasons people fail at this practice is tension. Here's what he means. When most people try to imagine their desire fulfilled, they do it with effort. They strain, they clench their mental muscles, so to speak. They try really hard to make themselves feel something. And Neville says this effort actually works against you. Think about it this way. If you're trying to fall asleep and you try really hard to fall asleep, what happens? You stay awake longer. The effort itself keeps you alert. The same thing happens with feeling. If you're straining to feel something, that strain itself is a feeling, and it's a feeling of effort, of struggle, of this is hard. And that's the feeling that goes into the subconscious, not the desired feeling, the feeling of struggle. Neville says the correct approach is the opposite, relaxation. Before you even begin to imagine your desired scene, get physically comfortable, let your body go loose, let your breathing slow down naturally, don't force anything. And then, from this relaxed state, let the scene arrest gently. Don't construct it with effort. Let it unfold the way a daydream unfolds easily, without strain. There's a man Neville talks about. He wanted a promotion at his company. He had tried visualizing it for weeks, sitting upright, eyes closed, concentrating hard, trying to force the image of his boss handing him the promotion letter. Nothing happened. If anything, he became more anxious about the promotion, not less. Then he changed his approach. Instead of sitting upright and concentrating, he would lie down at night, let his body go, completely loose, almost like he was already asleep. And in that loose, drowsy state, instead of forcing the scene, he would just let it drift in. His boss saying a few words of congratulations, nothing elaborate, just a brief, soft impression. And he'd let himself feel the quiet satisfaction of it, not excitement, not triumph, just a calm, settled feeling of this is done. Within a short time, the promotion came. Throughout a reorganization he hadn't expected, involving a department change he hadn't even applied for. Neville's point here is that ease is part of the technique, not separate from it. The state of relaxation isn't just preparation for the practice. It's part of what makes the feeling genuine rather than performed. Now let's talk about something Neville discusses that touches almost everyone, the idea of the fixed self. Most people walk around with a very fixed idea of who they are. I'm someone who gets nervous in social situations. I'm someone who's bad with money. I'm someone who always ends up in difficult relationships. I'm someone who isn't lucky. These statements feel like descriptions, like someone describing the color of their eyes. Just a fact about themselves. But Neville says these aren't descriptions, they're definitions. And definitions, unlike descriptions, are self-fulfilling. A description tells you what is. A definition tells your subconscious what to keep producing. Here's an example that might feel familiar to a lot of people. Say there's a woman who has decided somewhere along the way that she's not photogenic. Maybe someone made it a comment once, or she saw a few unflattering photos early on, and somewhere this became part of how she sees herself. Now every time a camera comes out, what happens? She tenses up, her smile becomes forced, her body stiffens slightly, and the photo comes out looking exactly the way she expected. Stiff, forced, not quite right. See, she thinks, I told you I'm not photogenic. But Neville would point out the photo didn't fail because of her face. It failed because of the feeling she brought into that moment, the tension, the self-consciousness, the anticipation of looking bad. The camera captured that feeling. If before the photo she had genuinely felt relaxed, comfortable, even a little playful, the photo would have captured something completely different. Not because her face changed, because her feeling changed, and that feeling expressed itself physically. Neville says this same pattern runs through every area of life, not just photographs. Whatever fixed definition you carry about yourself, your body, your behavior, and even the external world around you will keep finding ways to confirm itself, because you keep bringing that same feeling into the moments where it gets expressed. And the way out isn't to fight the definition directly, arguing with yourself, No, I am photogenic, I am good with people, while still carrying the old feeling underneath doesn't work. We covered this before with words versus feeling. The way out is to find moments, especially in that relaxed state before sleep, to genuinely feel the alternative, not as an argument, as an experience. A few seconds of genuinely feeling at ease in front of a camera. A few seconds of genuinely feeling comfortable in a social situation. A few seconds of genuinely feeling capable with money. Small, genuine, repeated. Now let's get into something Neville talks about that's a bit more unusual, but it's one of the more memorable parts of this book. He talks about how the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between yourself and other people in the way we might assume. This sounds strange at first. Obviously, you're you and someone else is someone else. But Neville's point is more subtle than that. He says, when you hold a feeling about another person strongly and consistently, that feeling doesn't just sit inertly in your own mind. It has an effect, both on how you experience that person and, in some cases, on how that person actually shows up. We touched on this a little with the boss example earlier, but let's go deeper with a different kind of example. Say, there's a man whose father he hasn't spoken to in years. There was a falling out, harsh words were exchanged, and ever since, whenever this man thinks of his father, the feeling that comes up is resentment, hurt, distance. Every time the father's name comes up in conversation and memory, this same feeling gets triggered and reinforced. Neville says this feeling doesn't just affect the son's own internal state. It also keeps the relationship locked in that same configuration. The son's feeling about his father is, in a sense, a continuous vote for what that relationship is and will continue to be. Now imagine if, before sleep one night, instead of replaying the resentment, the son imagined a different scene. His father calling, just to talk, nothing dramatic, just an ordinary, warm conversation. And the son feels, genuinely, the ease of that, the absence of tension, maybe even some warmth. Neville's claim is that this isn't just a private exercise with no effect beyond the son's own mood. He says this kind of feeling, held genuinely and repeatedly, has a way of reaching the other person too. Maybe the father starts thinking about reaching out for reasons he himself doesn't fully understand. Maybe when they do eventually speak, the tone is different than either of them expected. Neville doesn't claim this works like sending a text message where the content is transmitted directly. It's subtler than that. He describes it more like a shift in the entire field of the relationship, which both people are, in some sense, part of. Whether or not someone finds this part of the teaching easy to accept, the practical instruction remains useful on its own terms. If there's a relationship in your life that's stuck in a difficult pattern, and you keep reinforcing that pattern every time you think about that person with the same old feeling, you're not just suffering, you're actively maintaining the pattern. And the alternative, choosing a different feeling about that person, even briefly, even just before sleep, is available to you, regardless of what the other person is doing or not doing. Now, Neville moves into something he calls the changed feeling, the changed future. This phrase captures something we've touched on already, but he takes it further here. He says, people often think of the future as something that's coming toward them, like a train on a track, and all they can do is brace for impact or hope it's a good one. Neville says this is backwards. He says, the future doesn't exist yet in any fixed form. What exists is your current feeling. And your current feeling is what's actively shaping what the future will become. This means the future isn't something you're waiting for. It's something you're continuously building right now through what you feel right now. There's a kind of test Neville suggests, almost like a personal experiment. He says, take an area of your life where you feel like things are going to be a certain way. Maybe you feel like an upcoming week is going to be stressful or an upcoming conversation is going to be awkward, notice that feeling. Notice how certain it feels, how automatic. Now, Neville says, deliberately for just a few minutes, hold a different feeling about that same upcoming event. Not by arguing with yourself about whether it's realistic, just by imagining briefly what it would feel like if that event went smoothly, easily, even pleasantly. And let yourself feel that, even if it's just for a minute or two. He says you don't need to convince yourself this new feeling is true. You just need to give it space alongside or instead of the old feeling, and then watch what happens. This isn't presented as a guaranteed formula where every single feeling produces an instant and obvious result. Neville is clear that this is a practice, something that compounds over time, the way the SATS practice does. But he says even small experiments like this start to reveal something, that the future you were so certain about wasn't actually fixed. It was just the feeling you'd been holding projected forward and mistaken for a prediction. Now let's talk about something Neville addresses that's especially relevant for people going through something genuinely difficult. Not minor inconveniences, but real hardship. Illness, loss, serious financial trouble. He doesn't pretend these situations are easy, or that feeling is some kind of bypass that makes pain disappear instantly. But he makes an important distinction. He separates the situation itself from the meaning and trajectory we attach to it through our feeling. Here's an example. Say someone is dealing with a health issue. The situation, the physical reality of the condition is what it is. Neville isn't suggesting you can simply feel a diagnosis away or that medical reality bends instantly to thought with no other factors involved, but he says there's a difference between someone who, in the midst of a health challenge, holds a constant feeling of this is permanent, this defines me now, this is how things will always be, and someone who, even while dealing with the same physical reality, holds a feeling of this is a chapter, not the whole story, and I can still feel into a future where things are different. These two feelings don't change the present moment's physical facts. But Neville's argument is that they shape the trajectory going forward. The person who has, even amid difficulty, found moments to genuinely feel a sense of recovery, of life continuing, of better days, is planting something different in the subconscious than the person whose every feeling reinforces this is permanent. He's careful here. He doesn't frame this as if you don't get better, it's your fault for not feeling right. That would be cruel, and it would also misunderstand everything he's taught about feeling not being something you can force or fake under pressure. Instead, he frames it gently, almost as an invitation rather than a demand. He says, even in hard times, even for just a few minutes a day, if you can find your way to a genuine feeling, even a small one, of ease, of things continuing, of some kind of goodness still available to you, that's not nothing. That's a seed. And seeds, as we discussed, take time, and they don't require you to abandon your awareness of the current situation. They just require a few honest minutises where a different feeling gets to exist too. Now let's shift to something lighter, but very practically useful. Neville talks about what he calls the controlled daydream. Most people daydream constantly, but without any direction. Sitting on a bus, waiting in line, lying in bed before falling asleep, the mind wanders. And often it wanders toward worry, toward replaying conversations, toward imagining worst-case scenarios. This is daydreaming. It's just uncontrolled daydreaming, and it's running in a direction nobody chose on purpose. Neville says since you're going to daydream anyway, since the mind is going to wander into imagined scenarios regardless, why not choose the direction? The controlled daydream is simply this: taking those naturally occurring wandering moments on a commute, in a waiting room, in the shower, and instead of letting the mind drift toward worry or replay, gently directing it toward a brief scene of something going well. This doesn't need to be the same as the deep satiya practice before sleep. It's lighter, more casual, just little moments throughout the day where instead of letting the mind rehearse anxiety, you let it rehearse ease or success or warmth, even briefly. Neville says these small moments scattered throughout the day add up. They're like little top-ups to the main practice you do before sleep. They keep the new feeling present instead of letting the old anxious feeling have free rein during all the in-between moments of the day. Now, something Neville discusses toward the latter part of this book, which connects everything together. He talks about what he calls living in the end. This phrase might sound familiar if you've come across other manifestation teachings because it's become a commonly repeated phrase. But in this book, Neville gives it a very specific, grounded meaning. He says, most people, when they think about their desires, think about the beginning and the middle, the starting point, where they are now, and the middle, the steps, the plans, the how, but they rarely actually inhabit the end, the state of having already arrived. Living in the end means spending time, real time, even if brief, actually being in that end state, not visiting it as a tourist, glancing at it and then returning to your current circumstances. Actually living there for those few minutes. Neville gives a small, very human example. He talks about someone who wanted to feel more financially secure, not wealthy in some extravagant sense, just secure. The kind of feeling where you don't flinch when an unexpected expense comes up. Instead of imagining a huge bank balance or some dramatic financial windfall, this person simply imagined an ordinary moment, opening a bill, an unexpected one, and feeling completely unbothered by it. Just paying it calmly the way you'd handle something completely routine. That's it. No fireworks, no dramatic scene. Just the quiet, ordinary feeling of security in an ordinary moment. Neville says this kind of living in the end is often more effective than grand, elaborate visualizations, precisely because it's so ordinary that it's easy to genuinely feel. It doesn't require you to imagine some far-off, hard-to-believe scenario. It just asks you to feel what an ordinary day would feel like on the other side of your current concern. And ordinary feelings, because they're easier to genuinely inhabit, often go deeper into the subconscious than grand ones that feel like a stretch. Now, toward the end of this book, Neville returns to something very simple, almost like he's bringing the whole teaching back down to earth after everything he said. He says, at the end of the day, this isn't a complicated system. It doesn't require you to master complex rituals or memorize elaborate techniques or spend hours every day. It requires one thing, becoming aware of what you're feeling and gently, patiently redirecting that feeling when it's not serving you. That's it. He acknowledges this is, in another sense, not simple at all, because feelings run deep and old patterns don't dissolve overnight. But the instruction itself is simple. Notice the feeling. If it's the feeling of don't have, of worry, of this is permanent, gently, without force, without self-criticism, find a few minutes, especially before sleep, to feel something else, something closer to what you actually want your life to feel like. And then let it go. Don't grip it with desperation. Don't check constantly to see if it's working. Just plant it and continue living. Neville closes with something that, in its own quiet way, sums up everything this book has been circling around. He says, most people spend their lives reacting to feelings as if those feelings were simply happening to them, the way weather happens. Something to be endured or enjoyed, but not something within their control. But feeling, he says, isn't weather. It's closer to language. It's something you're always, in some sense, speaking, whether you realize it or not. And like any language, once you become aware that you're speaking it, you can start to choose your words more carefully, not perfectly, not all at once, but more carefully over time. And the life that responds to that language, the outer world that takes shape around what you've been feeling day after day, night after night, that life will slowly start to speak back in the same language you've been using. This is the secret Neville spent his life trying to point toward, not a secret hidden in some far-off place requiring years of searching to uncover, a secret that's been with every person every single day in every feeling they've ever had. Feeling is the secret, not because it's mysterious, but because it's been so close, so constant, so familiar that almost nobody thought to look at it directly. Now you have.